Hello there, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I have with you Brian Brault. He is on the show with me, and there were a couple different things that stood out. I think it'll be obvious as we start our conversation why he's on here. But really, the key is like, how do we have as leaders more of a global impact? How do we go into places, so accept roles of leadership, and then how do we expand the presence, the giftedness and stuff that we have in the world in an intentional way and from the heart. So, Brian, that's why you're on here, and I'm excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here, Heather.
So, for those who are listening right now, tell us where you are on your leadership journey.
Wow, great question. So I would say I am at a point in my leadership journey where I'm still learning. I think leaders are always on a journey of learning. In fact, the more I learn, the more I realize I need to learn. And I find that in talking with other people, I always learn so much about myself, about others, and how I can show up better. So I feel like I'm still on my leadership journey. I'm 61 years old, so that's a little humbling to say. But I built and sold two businesses, and really I think those businesses were successful because of the approach that we as a leadership team took at building leaders. I think there's this whole concept of positional authority, which comes with a title. When you have a title or you own a business, you have authority because of your position. But what I've learned over the years is learning to lead with relational authority, leading leaders with relational authority, which means you're leading with influence or leading with through collaboration. And I have found that's kind of where I am now, is leading other strong leaders, building another company, my third company, that is focused on helping to build leaders across all dimensions of their life. But I also teach leadership. So I've been asked by the Entrepreneurs Organization to travel the world and help develop and really lead on a journey. They're up and coming, developing leaders in the organization that step up and lead. And the reason that I like that so much is one of the first things I say is, hey, listen, I have nothing to teach you. I think you come here with questions, but the answers that you're looking for, I believe, are already inside you. I just hope that I can share my own perspective, my own experience in a way and challenge you with questions or encourage conversations between each other that you'll be able to connect those answers with your own heart. So
So now, for those who are listening, because we have this, I have a large cross section. I have people that are already like are entrepreneurs. I have folks that are in the corporate world that are at the top, those in the middle, those in the kind of supervisory level. I have high potentials. I've got people all over the world. So it's just a totally different cross section. For those listening, let us know. Tell them a little bit about like both of the businesses that you sold, and then a little bit more about Entrepreneurs Organization, just so that they can get context for where you were leading and how you were growing it. Okay.
yeah, sure. Great. So the very first business I started while I was a senior in undergraduate school and built that business. It started out as kind of like a power washing business, which, back when I was a senior in college, power washing was not that big of a thing back then, but I saw an opportunity and started to build a little business that I thought I would just do between my undergraduate and my MBA program. And then right before the MBA program started, all of a sudden I got this huge opportunity to start building with this huge commercial grocery store company, and ended up not finishing my MBA because just the business opportunity was there and that was consuming all my time. That business eventually grew into over 300 employees. And that we got the 300 employees, Heather, without a single salesperson. And it was all built on relationships. And my belief was, if you take care of your customers and you take care of your team, your employees, and you're priced reasonably well, that the business will grow. And fundamentally, that's how we built our business. That I sold that business in the first part of it. I sold our southern division in Florida in 2008, and then I sold the rest of that business in 2014. But in 2005, I had started a second business that was called Pure Wellness Rooms. And that was a company that introduced health-based wellness rooms to the hotel industry. And that was a fun business to build. I traveled a lot, traveled around the world, certainly around the United States and Canada. And in 2010, that company was identified as a brand standard by Hyatt Hotels. And with that, we just we grew by leaps and bounds. We were required to be in every Hyatt hotel in the Americas. So that's Canada, the United States, and Latin America, Caribbean. And we had 6 months to pull that off. And so we pulled a team together, and that was absolutely incredible. In 2013, there was a change in leadership at Hyatt at the highest level, and they made a decision to downgrade us from a brand standard, which means it's required, to a brand recommendation, which means we like your program, but it's no longer required. And we knew we were in trouble. We probably would lose about 30% of our revenue. And it was really interesting, Heather, because I had one of my biggest leadership lessons in that moment. Because a week later, so we immediately called our whole team to come together in our office, and we had a meeting to say, what are we going to do? And everyone showed up. And for a week, I had been praying for the right words to guide them. And I thought I had been failed, because the meeting started and I was looking down for what felt like 10 minutes. It was probably 10 seconds. And then I looked up and I said, hey, listen, we all know why we're here, and I wish I had the answer, but I don't. And their eyes got really big. And I said, but what I'm certain of is that the answer's in this room.
Mm.
And their eyes got even bigger. And then finally, about 15, 20 seconds later, someone said, well, what if we tried this? And then someone else said, or we could do this. And then 2 hours later, we had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but we had a plan. Here's the lesson. Everyone's walking out, and I'm just feeling like I had failed as a leader because I didn't have the answer. And one woman that works with us from Houston was the last one to leave. And she came over to me and she said, thank you. And I said, for what? She said, I've never seen you be as strong of a leader as you were today.
Mm.
And I said, really? I said, why is that? Because I didn't feel that. I didn't tell her that, but I said, why is that? She said, because you admitted that you didn't know, and that's okay. And you allowed us to step in and help. And I think we have a really good plan. And what that told me in that moment is that that was my first experience really understanding leading with vulnerability, because I was committed to getting an answer, but I didn't have it. And I was okay saying I didn't have it. Well, I wasn't okay. I had no choice but to say it. But I
Yeah.
learned that it was really in empowering others to step up and lead, was just a really empowering moment for me. So
And it's like it was like such a great lesson even for all of us to just understand that we aren't in it alone. We shouldn't be in it alone. And I love the idea that like I'm in this room at this table, and I think more leaders need to understand that the answers that they're looking for and the outcomes that they want is right in the room. Like the people that are going to be there to help to deliver it, it's right in the room. Oftentimes they're looking on the outside and they're not realizing what's right in front of them. The same could be true for, if it's like frontline, like if it's hotel, for example, and a lot of the times the answers are right at the front line because they interact so much with with guests and things. So they're going to understand more about what's happening. So when you need to look for a solution, the first place you should go is it's like the gold is right there in the mountains, right?
yes,
It's
yes,
them.
yes,
So I
yep,
love that so much. Everything about that. Everything about that.
yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Well, you asked about the entrepreneurs organization. So that company, I sold a 70% stake in that company in early 2017 and stayed on with them till the end of 2018. And that's when I stepped away and started this third company. And then recently, about a year and a half ago, sold off the rest of that to the same group that bought the 70%. Anyways,
Mm.
the Entrepreneurs Organization has been around for about 37 years. So it's similar if the listeners are familiar with YPO or Vistage, those kinds of programs. The Entrepreneurs Organization is about 20,000 members worldwide. They're in about 60 countries, about 220 chapters, 220, 25 chapters around the world. And what it is a peer-to-peer network where it focuses on the entrepreneurial pillars of learning, which is people, strategy, execution, cash, and leadership. And there's programming that teaches. So there's a lot of learning that takes place. There's executive education, but there's also this concept called Form, which is a peer-to-peer group of 6 to 10 people that get together consistently every month, and they talk about their entrepreneurial journey and their entrepreneurial life. So that's not just their business, that's also their family, their personal life. And one thing that EO does really well is it understands that being an entrepreneur isn't just what you start at 8 in the morning and do till 6 or 7 o'clock at night. It's how you live life. It's how you show up in your family. It's how you show up in your friendships. It's how you show up in your community. And of course, how you show up in work. And so it's a growing organization. They're on pace to be about 35,000 by the year 2030. And I had the privilege of being on the board of directors in between 2015 and 2018. And then I was asked to be chair of the board of that organization between 2017 and 2018, which is, so they're all 1 year terms. And when I stepped down from that, when I was done being on the board and being chair, I was asked if I would then be a part of a 3-person team that helped develop the emerging leaders in the entrepreneurs organization. And so that's a lot of what I do now.
So what's your favorite part of the entrepreneurial journey? What I mean by because you had the two businesses that you had it and then you scaled it and you sold it. What was your favorite part of all that journey?
Probably when I found out that I was going to be chair of the board of EO, I knew that that role would change me. And so I wanted to make sure two things. One is that it changed me for good, for the better, for the good, but it also that I was able to be impactful. So I asked two different people to mentor me. One was one of the founders of Priceline.com, a guy named Jeff Hoffman. And that was really more about how to spread entrepreneurship around the world, but also how to harness and leverage the entrepreneurial heart to do good in the world. And
Mm,
if you want to talk about that, we can. But we ended up with a partnership with the United Nations where we bring entrepreneurs together to solve some of the problems that the world faces with a very innovative, very compassionate, innovative, passionate, tenacious approach that entrepreneurs bring. The other person that I asked to mentor me is a guy named Warren Rustan. And I wanted to make sure that as I stepped into this leadership role, that I I even improved as a person, that I just wanted to make this be a positive thing for my life and my family and my wife and I and the people that I was leading. The very first meeting we had as a mentor, I asked him, I said, I have to be totally honest here. I said, I don't understand how I got here. I feel like I fooled everyone to be here. Now I'm being asked to chair this organization. I don't even see myself as a very good leader. I don't really understand this. So rather than try to convince me I was a good leader, he said, I'd like you to read this book. And the book was called Discover Your True North by Bill George, who had previously been the CEO of Medtronics and is now a professor at Harvard Business School. And he teaches leadership. In that book, the very first chapter, basically what it says is the era of Jack Welch and GE, where the smartest person in the room evolves to be the leaders, has shifted. And it's now people with higher emotional intelligence, the people who genuinely care about the people they're leading, people who are good at building teams, and also the people who aren't focused on what they need to do to get ahead or climb the corporate ladder. They just focus on being the best they can in the role that they're in. And Heather, at 52 years old, that was the first time in my life that all of a sudden I thought, wow, that feels more like me. And if that's what people see, then maybe I am ready for this role. Maybe I can be impactful in this role. And I don't have to try to skirt by them for another year to fool them. It was probably my most impactful moment because I've never been the smartest person in the room, even when I'm alone. So it was that whole understanding of the way leadership was changing certainly made sense to me. It felt good because it felt more like me.
Yes, it's interesting now. Even when I speak to audiences, I'll see comments sometimes on the surveys that'll say, "What a refreshing, direction to go in leadership." And I was thinking to myself, like, we've been talking about servant leadership, like all these different things for so many years now, and it's interesting that there are a lot of environments that still have just not taken it on. So it feels fresh to so many, is what I'm saying, even though that concept of emotional intelligence came out way long ago, servant leadership way long ago. My concept is called caring leadership, and that's kind of my body of work is all about caring leadership. And so it's just kind of interesting how again, how I'll see those comments. It's like how it shouldn't be that refreshing because like we should already get this thing down, right? But we just aren't. We just aren't living this out.
I think there's just so much that we as a planet are evolving as leaders though. And just carrying leadership, one of the things, because I talk about servant leadership and authentic leadership and leading with vulnerability and leading with compassion. But I'm always very clear. I said, please don't misunderstand me. That does not mean weak leaders. That does not mean we accept not delivering results. Quite honestly, I believe if you are a servant-minded leader and you are very clear on where we're going, what we need to do to get there, and what everyone's role is, and everyone aligns with that and is involved in creating those answers, then the role of the leader is to serve, roll down to the bottom of the organization and serve the people you lead. And what that means is that your job at that point is to make sure they have the resources they need to be successful. And sometimes that's holding them accountable. Sometimes that's giving them a pat on the back. Sometimes it's a proverbial kick in the pants. It's sometimes it's buying them lunch or running an errand so they can finish it, meet a deadline. But it doesn't mean what it means is, Heather, if I have to have a difficult conversation with you, I'm going to have the difficult conversation and I'm going to let you know what it is we need to talk about. But before we move on to that, I'm going to say, but Heather, you know what? This isn't like you normally.
Yeah.
I think, is there something going on in your life that we just maybe we need to step in and give you a hand right now? Because we need to deliver this because our customers and the rest of our team are counting on this. But if you're going through a difficult time or there's something going on in your life, let's talk about that and how we need to move forward to help deliver the result we've committed to.
It's
So,
so it's like
and
I would have used those exact words. Those are the words. That's how I coach everybody to give those like course correction conversations. I always say that if I have done my job, so caring leadership is showing concern and kindness towards those who look to you for guidance. Okay. So it applies to pretty much anybody. Yes, you can have manager title. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but that tends to be the folks I'm mostly talking to are those who lead through, have that management title, have authority in some way, shape, or form. But I always say, if we've done the hard work up front, which is the stuff that may seem softer to some, which is what you're talking about, checking in. Is it, how's everything going with your family? How is that happening with your child at school? What's going on with your aging parent? And I'm doing all of these things where I'm curious, I'm interested, I'm there to support. I do all, and now something doesn't go as we plan. Something is not right in your interactions and your behavior and your whatever that is. And I have to have a conversation with you. Well, because I put all the dividends into the account. I did all of that hard work. When I come to you to help you course correct, it feels very natural to have the conversation. You
right.
will actually, instead of feeling like that, like the words that they may use for another manager, for me, they may feel inside a sense of disappointment in themselves that they let me down because of how much I pour into them. And of course, in the end, I don't want them to feel disappointed, but I'd rather them feel disappointed than like super angry at me or feel like they've been jolted by me, something like that, right? I'd rather them
Yeah.
feel, okay, I need to get better. It's an obligation that comes out of a collaborative relationship, one of
Right.
partnership, where we're both are
Yeah.
trying to hold each other accountable. So I love, Brian, the way you came at that. I mean, I just saw a full-on mirror of like, oh, that's I've never heard it from the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I like about the term caring leadership is, like, I always will say to people, and I'd love your perspective on it, there's a difference between being nice and being kind. Being nice is flowery, fluffy, maybe avoiding difficult conversations. Being kind is being authentic and being transparent.
Yep,
And it's that exactly kind of what you just said is, hey, listen, I need to have this conversation with you because you're not meeting your commitments, and you're not living up to what we agreed on, which is different than what I've imposed on you, by the way.
totally.
And so
Totally.
but being kind is the kind truth. Sometimes isn't what people want to hear, but it is the truth. And so I think if you speak the kind truth, no, how upset can you be at someone who's speaking the truth?
So,
And
so very true. Oh
oh,
yeah,
and
I
I see
love this.
you've got be kind
I do.
on behind you. And I also saw your dog, which I love. I wear a shirt, and but I wear a shirt. On the front it says "Be kind," and on the back it says, "Everyone we meet is fighting some battle we know nothing about."
Hmm.
which kind of goes to speak to what I was just saying is if you
Totally.
have good people and a good team and something's not going right and they're capable of doing it right and have the resources to do it right, then it's usually some battle they're fighting at home, at work, with a coworker, with themselves that is probably the issue. And it's just a matter of leaning in with curiosity first and then dealing with the issue. So
So true. Like I said, you're my kind of leader. I knew there was a reason why I said yes to having you on this show. It's just like, yep, I'm hearing it, and there's a mirror and there's affirmation, but I'm learning a lot from you on the entrepreneurial front and kind of what is required. But going back to that story of like the person who, what, after you had kind of again a mirror and you said, oh, I guess I know why. Like, I guess I am a servant leader and I am curious and I'm not in this for the affirmation or the act, like to be acclaimed, to be, recognized. I'm doing this for, a different mission, a different focus. And it makes a huge difference when you're not trying to lead because you're like, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, right? You're trying to get to something at the end. You're trying to achieve things at the end. And I'm thinking to myself, as you're talking about that journey and selling to companies, I'm like, and why are you still actually working? Like, I would just be laying on a beach. No, I say that. I'm always going to have something to do too. Always want to be loading in and focusing on how I can change the world too, like you are. But I bet you there's people here going, and why is this guy still working?
well, I still work for myself. Well,
Yes.
my wife is my partner in this last venture. We've never worked together, and we've been doing this now, I guess, 6 years. And I think it was really just in the last year we finally figured it out. It was not an easy journey, and it's really my fault because I've always been kind of the one in charge, except at home. And so working with my wife is had amazing moments, but it's challenging as well, mostly
Hmm.
because it's harder to shut down
Oh,
work when the person you work with is always there with you. So it's
yes, totally been there. I've been there. I worked with my husband. He and I worked together for 4 years, and I came into his
yeah,
existing business, and it was the exact same thing. And I'm a person who can't shut down, and he can. So it was
yeah,
really hard. I was just like always wanted to talk about work. It was a tough thing. At some point, I had to exit that because it was like, yep, yep, not going to work. Not working out.
yeah, yeah,
Right? It just certain people can, certain people can. So it's the way it is.
yeah.
Okay, so for those who are listening, 'cause we can hear all the heart there, and we can hear how you're not all about you, and that there's an external focus. Is there ever a time where you can think of on your journey where you're like maybe you didn't show up as much of an enlightened leader you are today? Like maybe you came off a little non-caring, less with heart. Can you think of a story, something that just pops in your head of like, "Ugh, this is when I wasn't so great." What was happening? What did it look like? What did you do to come out of it to become just more enlightened?
One thing that jumps to mind is in my second company, there was a point where I train in the entrepreneurial world, in the entrepreneurs organization. I train peer groups on how to interact well. And part of that is being an active listener, listening to understand versus listening to fix, being present with others. And so it's really, and when you're present with others, you're making them the center of your universe, and you're just listening to understand them versus listening to reply or listening to fix. And so I teach that. And I remember I was in St. Louis and I was teaching that. And at the end of the day, I was feeling pretty good about myself. And I got on a plane and came home. And the next morning, I had a meeting with our COO, our head of operations. And we were talking about something, and I was distracted. And finally, he just said, "You know what?" He said, "Time out." He said, "You don't listen to us." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You don't listen." He said, "So often you are doing other things, you're checking email, you just seem like," he said, "you make me feel like I'm not as important as all the other things going on in your life." And it was a stab in the heart, Heather, because I'm thinking, I teach this stuff. What are you talking about? Just because you teach it doesn't mean you do it. And and this is a person I really care about. And I took it to heart, and I thought, you know what? I need to start changing the way I show up with my team. And I had gotten careless, and I just when someone you really care about basically says, you make me feel like everything else you're doing is more important than me, and I'm the only one sitting here. It was kind of heartbreaking, but it was true. To be honest, it was true. And as soon as he said it, I realized it. My wife would probably tell you the same thing. And so I really started to work at it, and it will always be a challenge for me.
Yeah.
Even to this day, my wife's love language is quality time. So that means she just wants to be the center of my world. And that doesn't need to be forever. It just means if we're together, she doesn't want me on my phone. She doesn't want me
Hmm.
distracted by all these other things like this COO had mentioned. She just, hey, listen, if it's just going to be 5 minutes, that's okay. Let's just be with me for 5 minutes. And that's anybody. And what
Hmm.
I really came away with that, Heather, is I realized that I just need to shut my laptop down. If someone needs to talk to me about something important for more than, 10 seconds, just shut my laptop down, put my phone on silent or airplane mode or something, just get them out of my sight so I can't even see any of that, and just be present. Because what I really came away with that was this whole notion that I believe being present with someone, and I mean truly present, meaning you're not on your phone, you're not thinking about all the 100 other things you've got to do, or you're not looking over the shoulder to see who's coming in the room, but that you make them the center of your world for that moment in time. What you're telling them is they matter, and
Hmm.
everybody on the planet needs to matter. And so I think it could be the greatest gift you can give another human being. But I learned that by someone holding up a mirror and saying, yeah, you may teach that, but you don't do it. That was tough.
Thank you for sharing that. So powerful. For those who are listening to this right now, I know that just hit a nerve. I know it did. Hit a nerve for me. And as you do or did, Brian, I do too. I have a whole book on active listening.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, look at
and I
that.
always say that exact same thing you said. I'm telling you, I feel like we're like brother and sister from another mister. You said the same thing I always say, which is I think that listening is the most important thing you can do for another human being. I 100%, I actually do believe that. And I mean, really listening. And it is so hard with the buzzes and the kids and the dogs and all the things. Like, ah, and the level of intentionality that's required. Like for me, I'll call my own self on the carpet because because we teach it, we now I feel, at least for me now, I see it. So I'll be with my son and I'll notice like if I pick up my phone, I'll pick up he's saying something and I'm listening, and then all of a sudden I go, I'm something in my something he says gets into my head, and then I like do this and I look at, and I see his eyes drawn to my phone and he keeps talking and I'm like, oh shoot. And then I have to put it down because he knows what I stand for and he knows what I write. Right. And so that like my kids will call me in the carpet. They'll be like, oh, mom, you're not doing a really good job of active listening right now. Right. So I'll go, "Ugh," and I'll be like, I
Great book
know
for you,
it.
Mom.
And I know it. But like I know that I'm doing the thing and I'm like, put that thing down. I know I shouldn't do it. So you're
Yeah.
talking to me, we're talking to each other. And we are literally, you're sitting in South Africa, totally different background and everything. And I feel like we are just like one of the same.
So now when I go out to dinner, I'll text my kids because they're the only ones I'm really concerned about if I'm going to dinner. Is, hey, listen, I'm going to dinner with Mom. If you need us, call her because I'm going to leave my phone in the car. I have to do that.
Oh,
I
that's
have to do that.
so but when I do that, for example, so I'll be in the house and I mean I work from home or I'm on a plane. That's pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah.
And so they know that this thing is on me all the time. But then they're like
Yeah.
on the weekends, I'll be like, I want to leave it upstairs so that I'm down and I'm not doing that. And then they start, they don't cuss at me, but they kind of cuss at me for then leaving the phone somewhere else. Well, you're always on that thing. I'm like, but on the weekends, I'm purposely not doing that. And now I'm in trouble for it because you told me to stay off of that, same exact thing,
They
same
want
exact.
you. They want to text you and they want you right away. So
But they want me, but that's it. Like they don't want anyone else to want me or need me or get a hold of me.
that's right. That's
Isn't
right.
it funny? Oh my
Oh, it
gosh.
is.
Oh, okay. So for those who are listening right now, who could be, gosh, I mean, I don't know, they could have a similar background. They may not be. They could be just leaders at a crossroad. They're figuring out what their next step is. What would be a couple pearls of wisdom you'd leave them with, at, like ahas for them on this leadership journey?
Oh gosh, great question. One is I think if you're leading, you're leading people. And I would say look for the good in them. Look for the leadership abilities in people. Like I said, 51 52 years old, I didn't understand why I was evolving into leadership, but other people saw things in me. So there are incredible people on your team, people you lead that have abilities that they don't recognize in themselves. Nurture them, mentor them, empower them to become great leaders. And part of how we do that is realizing that, not only do we not have all the answers as leaders, it's okay. It's okay to not have the answers. We need to be committed to getting results. We needed to be committed to finding a path forward, but we don't have to be the ones that have all the answers. In fact, we probably get the best path forward if we're not the only ones coming up with the answer. It's just a matter of asking for help, asking for, just saying, hey, listen, I need your help to figure out the answer here, and genuinely listening for it, and having conversations and being collaborative, and there's a difference between being collaborative and consensus too, by the way. Consensus in business is awesome when you're looking to figure out where to go to lunch or dinner, but that's about it. To come up with consensus in business decisions, to me, is a recipe for frustration and probably failure on some level. Collaboration is very different. With collaboration, there's a clearly defined person who's accountable to take that forward. And that's not always the highest level of leadership. It's whoever's responsible or accountable for that area. Have input, understand what is the outcome that the person's looking for, and what can the team do to help them get that information. And then that person makes the decision. I don't know why I just went off on that tangent, but it popped into my head.
Well, I think it's a great one. So, but one of the lessons for those who are listening is consensus is not collaboration, and it does not impart the same amount of connection, the same amount of importance, the same amount of being heard and validated and valued in the relationship. Not the same thing. I mean, I think it's a great note to end on. It's boom, powerful. Lots. I've learned a lot listening to you and through your lessons, and I'm really happy that you came on. So I really appreciate you for that.
Here as well. You're awesome. And I think we are. We're what did you say? From
Brother and
another
sister of
mister.
another mister.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because when I was learning about you, I'm thinking the same thing, but I just didn't have that terminology, but
Well,
something along those lines.
leave it up to Heather to
Two
say
brothers
something
from
funny
another
like that.
mother is what came to mind, but that wasn't going to work. But
Exactly. Nope,
yeah,
we're good. We are all, I think we're tight. And I think we just need more. We don't, I'm not saying we need more people like me and like you. Like that's not really what the message is, but it is this concept of folks who care, folks who are out there serving, folks who have things that are outside themselves trying to extend it. And I'm trying to do more and more of that, like things that are outside of me and how did that impact other people, making sure that I'm focusing externally to uplift other people. The more we can do that, I think the better the world's going to be. And so thank you for being that person, Brian, on this planet.
glad to be here.
And thanks everybody for listening to the show as well. It's been my distinct pleasure. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Be well.